Alright then, my people, welcome to the Bright Show podcast, Boxing. Now before we start this video, please do me a favor, click the like button, subscribe and leave your comments in the section below because I really want to know what you really think about this one. Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder was the fight that we needed to see. But unfortunately, we're never going to see that fight. And that is an absolute disgrace. Boxing failed. Boxing really failed on that one. 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder was the biggest fight we'd ever seen. If that fight was made, it would have been the biggest fight that could have ever happened. And boxing took that fight from us. Boxing politics got in the way and it took the fight from us. Now, I say boxing politics, you can look at the promoters. I mean, DAZN on the other hand, Eddie Hearn. You've got the PBC in there in the US on the other hand, who were all greedy. Deontay Wilder and his team, they couldn't make that happen. Anthony Joshua and his team, they couldn't make that happen. And, you know, it's really unfortunate because we will never see that fight again. Deontay Wilder is a shot fighter at the moment. He has no confidence, right? The old Deontay Wilder that we knew, that was knocking people out, that was full of confidence, right? He's not the same fighter anymore. Anthony Joshua, on the other hand, has resurrected his career. But it's not the same for Deontay Wilder. So we're not going to see the same fighters in the ring if we get them in the ring. And to be fair, to be frank, I don't think anybody wants to see that fight now because it doesn't make sense, because Deontay Wilder has lost 4 of his last 5 fights. Anthony Joshua has won 4 of his last fights. Maybe 3 of his last fight. So it wouldn't make sense to put Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua in the ring because nobody's going to buy it. But this was a fight that 6 years ago, 5 years ago, was the biggest fight that we've ever seen. It was the biggest fight. It was Britain against the US, right? It was the Americans against the British. It was reminiscent of, Floyd Mayweather and Ricky Hatton. It was a fight that would have sold Wembley twice over. It was a fight that would have sold 120,000 fans, either in the US, in the UK, or somewhere in Africa, or somewhere in Dubai or Saudi Arabia. Wherever they would have put that fight would have sold out. And we sat here, we talked about it. Boxing fans got angry. Pundits talked about it. People, boxing analysts made videos about it. Everyone talked about it. Everyone was expecting this fight to happen. And it never happened. And boxing failed because of that. Because of the politics, because of promoters not wanting to work with each other, because of, greed and people, estimating what they're worth, was the reason why we never got this fight. And it's really unfortunate that has to happen because that fight would have been a fight that would have brought a lot of casuals to boxing. Because it's the heavyweight, 2 big punches going head to head, 2 guys with massive names. They were undefeated, both of them. Anthony Joshua before the Andrew Ruiz fight, and of course, Deontay Wilder before the Tyson Fury fight. They were both undefeated. Anthony Joshua had 3 of the belts. Deontay Wilder had, the last WBC belt. Both fighters coming together was the biggest thing we would have ever seen. And it never happened. And that is a disgrace. You can't put it on now because it wouldn't make sense. And for both fighters, that would have been their biggest payday probably ever in their careers. Because according to reports, DAZN put $100 million on the table for Deontay Wilder to fight AJ twice and maybe a third fight. So that would have been the biggest payday of Deontay Wilder's career. But for some reason, he got his team to convince him to not take the fight. And he didn't take the fight because that DAZN contract was on the table. And this is why I talk about boxing politics, promoters and people behind fighters that sometimes get in the way of some of the biggest fights that we want to see and that we never saw, or when we saw it, when we saw it, it was late. Such as Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao. That was late. That fight should have happened 5 years prior to the date that it happened. Maybe 4, maybe 3. But it should have happened before the time that we saw that fight. And this fight between Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder should have happened. And that fight would have propelled boxing into a different place. Would have brought boxing into the limelight and would have, elevated boxing to become a global sport that it was back in the 90s, back in the 80s. It would have, no doubt about that. Because the Americans were supporting Deontay Wilder and the British were supporting Anthony Joshua. And the world was watching. One Brit, one American come together, both punches. Deontay Wilder talks a good game. Anthony Joshua very respectful. So it would have been a fantastic matchup, right? And they would have sold that fight. They would have done press conferences everywhere in the world. And both fighters would have been in shape coming in. That would have been the biggest thing ever. And boxing robbed us of that fight. And that is an absolute disgrace that we never saw that fight. Deontay Wilder is done. Anthony Joshua's trajectory is leading elsewhere. And that fight will never happen again. And boxing needs to learn from this. This mistake should never happen again. And that's why it's probably good that the Saudis have come into boxing. They've invested in, and you're making the fights, the right fights, the biggest fights happen very frequently. And that's what we need to see. That's what is going to grow the sport of boxing, and that's what's going to put boxing on the map. But you guys let me know what you think about it. Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder. I think it's a disgrace that fight never happened. Boxing robbed us of the biggest fight in history. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you have a different opinion? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm always open and happy to have a conversation and have a debate in a section, in a comment section below. Of course, like this video, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get this channel up to 1K subscribers by the end of this year, and I know we're going to do it. So let's keep subscribing, let's keep liking, and I'll see you on the next one.